Let's take a second to plug and play. I've been informed that that's a thing that can happen. Maybe. Oh, whistle. Let's see. Oh, hello. I've plugged. Now I'm trying to play. There we go. And will this guy actually advance? No. All right. Sorry. Let's see if this will do what it's supposed to do. All right, that'll work. Hi, I'm Jeffu Warmouth. I'm a visual artist, and sometimes I have a problem keeping myself together. I've spent much of my artistic career playfully investigating the construction of identity, buoyed by ideas from post-structuralism and semiotics, and shaped by a comedic approach and an absurd worldview. It's tough sometimes in an artist's talk to know where to start to kind of trace a thread, but probably my first grand gesture on the subject was my 2001 installation, Super Jeffu Market, which is a fragmented self-portrait as a grocery store stocked with consumer goods that dissect my body, culture and psyche. And then the market's products also reflect our own self-images as media consumers. So here I am deconstructed into, pure drained self-esteem and shelled whole bruised ego and bagel belly. And as much as the contents seem they're about food, this was really an investigation into media and meaning, about how mass media breaks down and rebuilds our identity through advertising, but then presented through social critique of absurdist comedy. In Ways of Seeing, John Berger describes how publicity creates glamour, showing a vision of the viewer's future in a position of envy. The viewer desires their own future and loathes their present self. And the manufacturer then sells back the viewer's self-love for the price of the product. So when advertising works on us, we become fragmented, right? You need this perfume to become a complete person, right? You're incomplete and you're fragmented, right? And so I'm kind of going on this logic. And I began thinking about the cans not as objects or contents, but really as pure media. So people could, comparison shop, pick and choose through these products that are all little jokes, but the complete installation adds up to more than the sum of its parts. And Baudrillard in The Consumer Society writes about the abundant profusion of objects stacked in packages or collections that we can only grasp as a total category, a chain of signifiers, a complex super object, or networks of objects to seduce and captivate. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But also that old idiom, if we are what we eat, and if that's true, and if we constantly are consuming media, and this is in the days before social media, this is 2001, it's gotten, the profusion has increased, right? But then we become constructions of that media. So what happens if I reverse the process to deconstruct myself into a fragmented set of commodities? So Baudrillard again, our universe has swallowed its double. Irony is inherent in things. The instant things become man-made products, artifacts, signs, commodities, they perform an artificial and ironic function by their very existence. So the commodity no longer functions as an object, but as media. No more nouns, someone said. Smash out nouns. So it may be at some level about the artist as spectacle, but it's also about all of us. I'm simply a convenient stand-in, a hapless dupe, an everyman, Keaton or Chaplin-esque everyman. And watching people browse the shelves, they imagine themselves and their own body parts or psychic fragments deconstructed through their own experience of mass media, consumer capitalism, and advertising. And this must have been an okay idea because 20 years later, the innovative art collective Meow Wolf created Omega Mart, which uses a similar entry point of humor, absurdism, and consumer culture to construct an immersive narrative about identity, loss, collectivism, culture, and parallel dimensions. Not that I'm giving away too much, but if you have a chance, I urge you to visit Omega Mart in Las Vegas. It's really quite a spectacle. As the tagline says, you have no idea what's in store for you. Uh, my 2010 installation, Food Court, pitted competing fast food franchises against one another. So JFC and Jeffu Burger are interactive fast food stands where viewers order via touchscreen, triggering a life-sized video Jeffu to prepare conceptual recipes, endure absurd situations, or overturn logic. And I was thinking here about this was done for the Boston Cyber Arts Festival that year. And so I was thinking about the cybernetic experience of fast food in a couple of ways. One, kind of fast food workers and customers are enacting pre-programmed robotic scripts, right? We're no different than the do you want fries with that, or do you want a supersize? But really, as customers, we're enacting these kind of theatrical action notes as well. The actual food couldn't have been produced without major technological that we don't often consider when we media and technology, but the sort of food and technology builds that. And then Norbert Wiener's notion of culture and jamming and feedback, et cetera. And so much like Super Jeffu Market, these installations directly satirize consumer culture. Each of the choices is a self-contained joke, and the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And lest we get too kind of academic and theoretical about it, I mean, there's huge inspiration from Tex Avery or Henny Youngman's nonstop one-liners, or Ernie Kovac's groundbreaking work in terms of media and television. But when I pair them in the same exhibition space, the other franchise then hurls abuse at his competitor and attempts to lure the hapless viewer to the other side. So it's really it's a playful, chaotic, noisy exploration of the fragmentation of identity in the consumer age. And let's see, I don't know if we'll have sound for reasons, but it's probably fine. You can pretend it's noisy and crazy. I'm not gonna stop the show to bring up sound, but although that's too bad because it's online. You can YouTube it. This is arcade combo where the invaders from the voiceover narration is quite something, but that's all right. Repelling the agents from planet Burgopia. JFC, you'll see in a moment in the menu, is just really playing on various permutations of what the Jeffu's and whatever the F and the C could be. Jeffu's fragmented consciousness, Jeffu's failed conceptualism, Il Jeffuria pizza. So it's noisy, chaotic, except when it's quiet. So when visitors aren't actively engaging, the food stands go into a sort of idle mode, engaged in activities that they might perform when they think no one is looking. And now they can also be presented singly, so they don't have to be clustered in a room. And so when I presented Jeffu Burger at the 2015 404 Festival in Rosario, Argentina, I worked with Gina Valenti, the festival's creative director, to translate all of the menus and the voice narration to make the work accessible to a Spanish-speaking audience. And the response and the experience were just incredible. And one student volunteer told me he thought it was incredibly important to see an American artist present work that was critical of American culture and policy, and to do it through the accessible mode of humor. So, and of course, it's possible to get stuck in a rut. And though some people are cut out for the fast-paced restaurant world, I had to find an exit from art food service at some point. And I became interested in those idling modes as fuel for absurdity and fragmentation and performance. So I began working in a series of performative video that I called Marginalia, kind of referencing the note-taking and sketching that happens in the margins of books. And if anybody did little stop motion animations of, I would draw these as a kid, parachutes exploding, and but Talmudic commentary or Sergio Aragonés classic marginal cartoons in Mad Magazine. And so in the video Crawl, multiple iterations of the artist, me, crawl along a set of narrow vinyl strips. Let's see if we can get that to play. There's no sound anyway, so it's fine, and we could just sort of talk it through. And so it's more toned down, more subtle, but still this kind of profusion and iteration. And this is projected on the wall, but the vinyl strips are real, so they kind of come out. There's a little bit of dimensionality. And they just go and they loop, and there are different configurations. And I wasn't necessarily thinking of comedy with this work, but the first time I showed it, someone looked at me and said, "Jeff, you just can't get away from being funny, can you?" I said, I didn't even know this was funny, but and in Drop, multiple iterations of me again carry boxes and drop them into a growing pile. When I presented this at the University Film and Video Association in Chicago, one of the student exhibition assistants told me sort of the opposite of the previous comment, that he really responded to the work because he had recently had a warehouse or supermarket job that was essentially what I'm illustrating in the video. Endless stacking and moving and packing of boxes, and it's the human condition, right? The same activity can be experienced as whimsical and fun, or repetitive and soul crushing. And clearly there's a myth of Sisyphus being referenced here as well. Say being referenced. There's my memory as passive rather than active. But I thought it was interesting that this student just said, "What is this work about?" And I told him a little bit, and he said, "I thought so, because I can so relate to this." And it's bringing back horrible memories. In 2012, an opportunity opened up to propose work for the 80-foot high 7-screen public LED marquee at the Boston Convention and Exhibition Center. And so I began creating a series of artworks featuring life-sized or somewhat larger than life multiples of myself engaged in activities, absurd, ludicrous, or tragic comic, right? Which is a nice theatrical term used by Samuel Beckett to describe, or used by Beckett's publishers or marketers to describe Waiting for Godot, but originally coined by Roman dramatist Plautus in the 2nd century, for works that incorporate both comedic and tragic elements. And I don't see it as tragedy, but of course I'm presenting this in New York, where there's the it's hard not to think of the two towers, and that was not a primary impulse, but there are people who see this that say, I can't read it any other way. But there's a happy ending because I'm swimming around. It's good. There's or we're caught in a fishbowl. I don't know. This one is One Up, in which I place myself into rather than actual landscapes, sort of classic video game landscapes, re-architected to match the architecture of the surrounding environment. So I'm in Donkey Kong, Joust, and Dig Dug for any classic arcade game players. I guess there's no happy ending here because game is always over. Three Heads Are Better Than One is a video installation and live performance. And this sculpture with life-sized video heads on TV monitors has an idle mode, where the two heads just kind of look at each other or look around. But when performing, I stand in the middle of the sculpture with my head poking through a hole in the shelf and engaged in a scripted trialogue with the other two Jeffus. And this trio of Jeffu talking heads slowly evolve our speech patterns from random guttural grunts to sing-song sounds, and then finally to it's been described, not my quote, hilarious and aggressive banter that reflects the harmony and discord in our everyday discourse, because I've never presumed to call myself hilarious, but we'll see. I guess there's no sound, but you can get a sense. Sound and sense, and that'll keep us on time. We'll be more likely to do so. So we're kind of grunting at each other and eventually chanting and harmonizing, and then sort of Beckett inspired dialogue ensues. Trialogue ensues. There's three of us, so it can't be a dialogue. At one point, I wanted to flip these idling performances around to turn the mirror back on the audience. And so I created the interactive installation Lilliput, which is a sort of inversion of those marginalia performances. Viewers who stand in front of the screen find themselves engaged in catching these small falling human figures. But while they're playing with the work, it's actually recording them, and then later the viewer slash performer is added to the array of figures that will fall for the next audience members to catch. I showed this at the 404 Festival in Lowell, Massachusetts, but I've shown it in other places as well. And I was highly inspired by other interactive video work, including Sadam Fujioka's A Tale of Space Time, Ellen Wetmore's Seven in Bed, both of which were shown at 404 festivals, but other video works stretching back through video art history, back to Dan Graham, who all played with audience, interacting in real time with their past selves. And again, we have a comedic take on identity fragmentation of the self, but now image reversed, so it's happening with the audience and experienced not through space but through time. I'll give a little piece of some people interacting with previous viewers of the piece. And it's always fun to include audience quotes. So when I was I had just installed this at my university, and I was in the room still tinkering with stuff, but not directly at the installation. A couple students came in, and so they didn't know I was the artist, so they felt free to talk. And they played with it for a moment. They said, "Oh, it's like an Instagram filter or a Snapchat filter." Sorry, it's like a Snapchat filter. And then they actually engaged with it for a bit, and they said, "Oh, it's actually better than a Snapchat filter." So I took that as the kind of media comment of the age. For the past 5 years, my sculpture has become an increasingly important part of my practice. My 2019 installation, Urgent Blowout, features a 12-foot inflated head, hollowed out and filled with dozens of slightly life-sized, if our lives are large, heads, all based on self-portrait photos and 3D scans. And the title, Urgent Blowout, was inspired, believe it or not, by the headline from a Harbor Freight Tools flyer that I received in the mail, but it really felt it had absurd resonance to feeling pulled in different directions through consumer culture and social media. And there's a video that accompanies it, which is a sort of 3D simulation done in a game engine, the Unity game engine. Oh, I believe that was also just shown at a 404. So there's some 404 at marketing going on here. And then last, and I know that we're getting close. We're slightly over time. My current show, which just opened on Friday at Boston Sculptors Gallery, features sculpture works on paper and animated video. And the centerpiece is Jeffu Model Kit, a collaboration with Ellen Wetmore, who presented yesterday. The title is pretty direct. It's a life-size self-portrait as a model kit to be separated from its plastic runners and reassembled into a complete person in the mind, hopefully, of the viewer. And the parts are plastic, some are life cast, some are mannequins, and the head is cast from a clay sculpture by Ellen. Like Super Jeffu Market from 20 years earlier, and much of the work in between, it's a playful exploration of the idea that humans are fragmented by the landscape of our consumer and media culture. Perhaps general semantics can make sense of this, but my theoretical inspirations, Marshall McLuhan, John Berger, Roland Barthes, Umberto Eco, and other theorists, highlighted the issues and not necessarily solutions. In 1923, Picasso said that art is the lie that reveals truth. And I've heard humor described this way as well. They don't really have an iconic humorist on record as making the claim. Maybe they'd never be a club that would have them as a member. But so these comical fictions made plastic, literally, problematize our media ecology, as I understand it. We're constantly taking ourselves apart, inflating or deflating ourselves, poking around at our own foundations, wandering or waving Charles Pierce's index in all directions, and hopefully putting ourselves back together. But it's up to the artist, humorist, and philosopher to highlight problems and not necessarily to posit solutions. As German art critic Bazan Brock noted, it is the domain of artists to highlight failure because who else is going to do it? Thank you very much.